What's up, everyone? We're back with another video talking about our RLCS 2025 World Championship predictions. We're going to start in with the play-ins, so let's get right into it. So first we got, it says MIBR, but I think it's the ex-Corinthians right here. Brad drops Rabel out of South America. And then versus Gen G. I don't know too much about those teams. I have seen Rabel in a few videos with people, but I'm gonna think Gen G handles this pretty well and comes out on top. Yeah, I think Gen G is just probably the better team. Moving on to Rock versus Foot. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I wanted to do a shout out to CodyvRL for making these spreadsheets available to the community. Should have done that at the beginning of the video. Forgot to. Sorry, Cody. Hopefully he gets the recognition he deserves for these videos. And yeah, moving on. So, Rock Esports versus Foot. I think Rock is an up-and-coming team in MENA, and Foot, they showed us what they can do at EWC. I think they have a little ways to go, so I think Rock comes out on top here 3-2. Moving on down, Shopify Rebellion. They kind of just ran through the last chance qualifiers for NA. It's going to be a few of theirs first LAN. However, I think they come out on top here, and I think it's not that close. I think Virtus Pro might squeak out a game. So I have Shopify moving on there. Coming down to Ninjas versus TSM. TSM didn't show me too much at AWC, and Ninjas looked pretty good coming through the EU last chance qualifier. So I'm going to have Ninjas moving on here 3-1. That brings us down to the lower quarterfinals. We got the Corinthians versus Foot. As I said, I don't know too much about the Corinthians, but Foot didn't look that bad at the at EWC, so I'm gonna give this to Foot probably 3-2. Virtus Pro versus TSM. I don't know too much about these teams. I obviously saw them at EWC. However, I would like to see more of the player Sphinx, so because of that, I actually am gonna say that Virtus Pro finds a way to come out on top here 3-2. That brings us up to our upper semifinals. So now Gen G's versus Rock Esports. Like I said, I don't know too much about Rock, but they're an up-and-coming team, and I don't think they're going to win this series, but I think it's going to be close. Obviously, Justin Cheese, Magic Bear from NA played pretty well at the beginning of EWC and then kind of fell off, so I'm hoping they have a better land here, but I think this is a close series, but Gen G comes out 3-2. Down to Shopify Ninjas. I think Shopify just has some crazy momentum right now. However, they both just came through the last chance qualifier. I think this is going to be a very close series. I think I'm actually going to give it to Ninjas 3-2. I think they squeak it out, and that'll bring Shopify down into the lower semifinals. So when we're looking at the lower semifinals, I don't think this is that close of a series. I actually think there's a chance Shopify could sweep them 3-0, but I'm going to give Foot a game 3-1. Down here with Rock versus Virtus. I think MENA is just a tougher region. I think Virtus might get one game off Rock, but I'm going to have Rock moving on over Virtus, qualified for the main event. Before we get to the main event, let's go over to the 1v1 bracket. And as we look at it, this is how it looks. This is how it shook out to the World's Finals. Moxie versus Nubo. So, who do we think? Well, from what I see, the only person Nubo had an issue with was Rawas, and then Moxie had some tight series. I think Nubo is going to come out on top in a tight series. So Nubo wins the 1v1s. Let's get back to the main event. So we're going to start off with Group A, which we have Carmine, and then from the play-ins we have Rock. I think Carmine handles them pretty handily, so we're going to go Carmine 3-0. I think Viteria, Tau, and Drali are just too good. Now here's an interesting series: Geek versus Ultimates. I think Ultimates usually starts land well and falls off. At least recently, Geek showed some things at EWC, and I think they're a team to be reckoned with here at Worlds. So I think this is going to be a close series, but I'm actually going to have Geek coming out on top to create an EU upper semifinal. Moving down to Dignitas Gen G. I think Dignitas is going to look to bounce back in a hard way from EWC. Appjack was not happy. You could see it in his post interview. He knows there's some things that they can fix, and they're going to come out firing, I think. So I think this is going to be... I'll give Gen G one game, but I think that could be possibly a 3-0. Here you have an interesting series: Furia versus Wildcard. Unfortunately, I just don't think Wildcard's as good as some of these other teams. We'll give them one game, but I think Furia comes out on top there. Now, moving on over to the Falcons, and this bracket over here. So Group B, Falcons versus Rebellion. I think the Falcons are going to try to prove something after not even making the finals at EWC in their home region. All three of their players are very talented. The twins are unbelievable. So I think the Falcons come out here and try to prove something, and I think they actually 3-0 Rebellion. Now, Vitality versus Space Station. If Monkey Moon and Exotic don't start playing a little bit better, in my opinion, I think Vitality has a chance not to make top 4 in this tournament. However, I think they're going to get by Space Station. They might lose one game. Space Station, I think next year is going to be a team that you're going to see making top 8s, top 4s, not just in the region, but on lands. So, moving on to NRG Ninjas. I'm looking for NRG to have a bounce back after making... I can't even remember if they made top 8 at EWC, but they did not finish where they wanted to, and I feel like sometimes their synergy is just a little off. Obviously, all three are great players, but their synergy is just a little off. However, I do think they get by Ninjas here, but I think it's going to be a closer series than people think. So I'm going to do NRG 3-2 there. That brings us down to an interesting matchup: Twisted Minds versus Secret. Twisted did not look that great at EWC, and Secret kind of looked better than people thought they were going to. However, I just gotta respect Twisted Mind and some of their finishes in the other lands earlier this year. I'm gonna say it's a close series, 3-2 Twisted Minds. So, back to Group A, and we're gonna go down to the lower quarterfinals. So, Rock versus the Ultimates. I think I think the Ultimates take this. I think LJ, Chronic, and First Killer are just too good. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people think. I think Rock gets a game and possibly forces overtime in another, but I think the Ultimates are going to move on there after losing round one. Kind of a gift for Gen G here versus Wildcard. Don't have to say too much. I already explained. I don't think Wildcard is really up to the level of play of these other teams at EWC. You saw them bring out the crazy cars and the crazy presets. So I have two North American teams down here in the lower semifinals. In the upper semifinals, Carmine versus Geek. I think Carmine's just gonna try to show Geek exactly what they did at EWC. I think Geek gets one game off them, but I think Geek is going to try to pick up steam for later in the tournament. Now here, I think Dignitas is going to still be fired up after EWC, and I think Dignitas is going to beat Furia 3-1. Yan lost Trofino. They're going to end up going down to the lower semifinals here. Most of the games will be close. It's not like any game will be a runaway, but I think Dignitas will just come out on top there. Lower semifinals, Furia versus Ultimates. Now, this is a place where I could see the Ultimates not come out on top. However, I think I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in a tight series, and I'm going to say that they come out on top 3-2. Now down here, Archie and Oli are just slightly ahead of Gen G right now, and I'm gonna say Gen G only is able to get one game off them, so that would mean Ultimates, Geek, Carmine, and Dignitas, one North American team, and 3 EU teams out of Group A making top 8. So let's go over to Group B. Lower quarterfinals, Shopify Rebellion versus Space Station. So I actually think Shopify Rebellion is going to win this series. I think it's going to be close, but I think Redo's experience, Wavy and two-piece, looked really good in the last chance qualifier, and I wasn't too impressed with what I saw from Space Station at EWC. I think they're still a little too young for some of the international competitions. So maybe next year is their year, but I'm gonna have Shopify moving on. Down here, now this is interesting. Ninjas versus Secret. As I said, Secret surprised people at EWC, and I think this series probably gonna be a pick'em. But I think Secret is going to come out on top here, and I think they're gonna look for a bounce back after round one, and actually win 3-1. So that means Falcons versus Vitality. Unfortunately, Falcons has 3 players that are kind of top 12 players in the world. Vitality only has 1, in my opinion. Yeah, and I mean, at EWC, I'm pretty sure in the 3rd game match, Falcons beat Vitality. So I'm gonna have Falcons here, 3-1. 3-1. In the other upper semifinal, NRG versus Twisted. I think NRG is actually going to be able to beat Twisted Minds. I believe I saw them beat Twisted Minds at the Raleigh Major. Let me just double check that. Yeah, they did. So I think it's going to be a repeat of that. So I'm gonna have Energy moving on against Twisted Minds. Since it was close at Raleigh, we'll go 3-2 here as well. That brings us into the lower semifinals. Twisted Minds versus Shopify. This is where I think Shopify's run is going to shock some people. I think Nubo is kind of in a similar situation to Zen. Maybe not such drastic situation, but he can only carry his team so far. I do think they are going to qualify for top 8 though, but I think Rebellion's going to shock a few people by how close the game is. Now this is an interesting series because people kind of know where I stand on Monkey Moon and Exotic right now. Zen is just an out of this world player, so I think this is a close series as well, but Zen just does just enough to get Vitality through and qualified out of Group B. So now, moving on to the upper and lower rounds. So lower round, Ultimates versus Vitality. So I actually think Ultimates are gonna take this because of what I've been saying about Monkey Moon and Exotic. Now it'd be interesting to see if Monkey Moon and Exotic kind of have their worlds buff that they normally do, in which case I could see them making it all the way to the semifinals. I'm not sure if the grand finals, there's a couple really good teams that I'm just not sure they make it through, but I think Ultimates could possibly surprise some people here, so I'm gonna have Ultimates moving on. Twisted Minds versus GK. I think GK showed people that they're one of the best teams in the world, even though that not a lot of people think so. So I think this is actually going to be a 4-2 by GK. So you have Ultimates and GK. Moving on up here to the upper quarterfinal. Unfortunately, I think Carmine just has NRG's number. NRG might get 2 games because of their mechanical abilities and their defense, but I think Carmine takes that 4-2. Now here, Falcons just won the Raleigh Major. Dignitas is a team that kind of surprised people at the beginning of the year, but they've been consistently one of the better teams at LAN. So I'll say this is a close series. But the Falcons also take that 4-2, which pushes NRG and Dignitas down into the lower quarterfinals. So you're gonna have an NA quarterfinal versus an EU quarterfinal. How crazy is that? So here, I think NRG show Ultimates why they're the class of NA, and NRG moves on to the semifinals. Here, I think this is going to be a really, really close series. And I'm actually going to have Dignitas taking this over GK. So that gives Falcons NRG versus Carmine Dignitas. I think Falcons NRG. Did they play already? No. So NRG makes top 4, but I think this is where their run ends. I think it's a close series, but I think Falcons take it best of 7, game 7 overtime, hopefully, 4-3. And then if you come over here, Carmine versus Dignitas, all EU semifinal. I think Dignitas top 4 is kind of probably their upper limit right now. I think these other teams are just a little above them. Carmine just won EWC. They won the Birmingham Major. They've been the #1 team in EU all year. So I think our final is going to end up being Falcons versus Carmine. So, Falcons versus Carmine. Falcons won the Raleigh Major. Carmine won the Birmingham Major. Carmine won EWC. Falcons came in 3rd at EWC. I think Carmine, all 3 players on their team are probably, you could make an argument for top 10 in the world. I think Falcons is probably pretty similar. However, I think Carmine has shown at 2 separate lands that they're going to come out on top, and I'm going to have them coming out on top here as well. 2025 RLCS World Champions, Carmine Corp. Here's how the pay distribution comes out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and hope to do more of these videos. Check me out on Twitch. Thanks. Bye.